Hey, what's up guys? So more than probably any other topic in the entire 5 years I've been on YouTube, I've been requested quite a few times now to make a video about Scottish independence. So I thought that I would give you a little summary of some of the main issues surrounding the whole independence referendum, and then I thought I'd also give you some of my own opinions. Now I'm going to try and be as objective as possible when it comes to the actual facts of the situation, although that is very difficult for an English person to do when talking about the bloody Scots. First and foremost, and one of the biggest issues surrounding this, is North Sea oil. Basically, a while back, the United Kingdom found out that there is quite a lot of oil to be drilled in the North Sea, and almost all of that oil, around 90% of it, lies within Scottish international waters. And so basically, the leaders of the separatist movement, the SNP, otherwise known as the Scottish National Party, believe that they can make billions of pounds off of the oil which is in Scottish waters and turn Scotland into one of the richest countries in the world. This isn't just me exaggerating, by the way. This is what Alex Salmond, the leader of the SNP, has come out and already said. They are arguing that if you take those billions of future oil pounds and apply it to what is currently quite a small population in Scotland, about 5 million people, so about 8% of the current population of the UK, that it will make them quite well off. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the opposition, the pro-unionists, argue that perhaps the oil should be split more along the lines of population, because finding the oil was a UK operation, so the remaining part of the UK, which still would maintain 92% of the population, should have a much larger share of the oil. They also argue that petitioning for independence on the basis of oil is a little bit silly, because not only is it becoming increasingly difficult to get the oil out of the North Sea, but also it is expected to run out in about 30 years' time. For me personally, I would really like some of that sweet, sweet oil money to keep flowing to my social services, although I do actually kind of get the Scottish position. I understand why they would want more of a share of it when most of it is in their country. However, I do not also believe that it is going to somehow turn Scotland into the next Qatar if they just get the 90% of the oil which they think they are deserved of. The second issue is that of self-determination. Now, the whole of the UK is currently governed from Westminster, which is in England. However, Scotland also has their own separate parliament based in Holyrood, which sounds an awful lot like Scooby-Doo trying to say Hollywood. The Scottish Parliament control local issues such as health services and education, whereas Westminster still controls all of the far-reaching issues like immigration and national defence. The Scottish, as I understand, are really not big fans of this. Firstly, I think that there is a sentiment in Scotland that they really hate being controlled by English people. From the vibe I get from them, a lot of Scottish people are still buzzing off of William Wallace's victory in the 13th century in repelling the English. And so the idea of being ruled by some English people makes a lot of them very mad. Also, the political ideologies of Scottish and English people tend to vary quite a lot. Scottish people are much more likely to vote for the Labour Party in the general election, whereas English people are much more likely to vote Conservative in the general election. And because obviously the population of England is much bigger, then they have a much bigger effect in who is going to get into the main parliament in Westminster. Now, on this issue, I'm actually personally in favour of Scotland becoming independent, and when I explain to you why, it may seem a little bit petty. Basically, 5 or 6 years ago, when the UK government was deciding on whether or not to make students pay for university, they were able to garner just a slight majority in Parliament and voted yes. And so that has left me with the tidy sum of about £50,000 of debt hanging over my head. Now, interestingly enough, despite being usually more liberally minded, if there had been no Scottish MPs in Westminster during the time of the vote on tuition fees, it would have got a no. If they had taken out all of the Scottish votes, then it would have been in favour of no, and I would not be currently paying any tuition fees at all. So you can see why I may be a little bit annoyed at Scottish politicians, but this is just one little issue. Why am I getting so frustrated? Well, it is because that currently Scottish students going to Scottish universities do not pay any university tuition fees. Furthermore, any mainland European students who want to go to Scotland do not have to pay any university tuition fees. However, if I, someone from England, wanted to go to a Scottish university, I would be still paying tuition fees. Honestly, for that reason and that reason alone, I would love to see an independent Scotland. Not only because I'm so bitter and I want all of the Scottish MPs out of Parliament, but also because the likely scenario is that if Scotland does become independent, then English people wanting to go to Scottish universities would not have to pay any fees, because that is the great world that we live in. There are also obviously a lot of other issues surrounding independence, such as despite all of the lovely, lovely oil money which Scotland wants to get its grubby little hands on, the GDP of Scotland is actually far, far, far lower than the rest of the UK, and the GDP per capita is still lower when you factor in population size. Also, to make matters worse, some huge businesses which are currently situated in Scotland, such as RBS, otherwise known as the Royal Bank of Scotland, have said that if Scotland do vote yes for independence, they're simply going to move south and just relocate to England. On top of this, if the SNP are successful in getting an independent Scotland, they still want to keep the sterling pound as their currency, whereas all of the UK politicians are not very keen on this idea whatsoever. This means that Scotland are likely to be left with one of two options. Either they start their own currency, or the more likely of the two, they adopt the euro if they will probably inevitably want to try and re-enter the EU as an independent country. And the general sentiment is that Scottish people do not really seem to want to join the euro. There is also the issue of national debt. The UK government currently owes about £1.5 trillion, which makes my university debt seem not so bad in the end, actually. The issue of dividing this debt is a little bit contentious. The SNP, surprise surprise, don't really want Scotland to take basically any of the debt whatsoever if they leave. Whereas the UK government has other ideas and think that they should take their fair share of the debt. And then there are some other people who think that Scotland should perhaps secede some of their rights to oil in return for less of the national debt being taken with them if they leave. Then there are a couple little issues which are sprinkled on top of all of this, such as what will happen to Team GB in the Olympics? Will we still compete together? Where will the UK station their nuclear submarines which are currently in Scotland? And most importantly of all, am I still allowed to cheer for Andy Murray? So as you can see, there are currently a lot of factors affecting this decision, which is why right now most people can't really tell which way it's going to go. The forecast for the vote is almost perfectly split 50-50, with the yes vote getting slightly more traction recently, but also people thinking that the no vote will probably gain more support on the actual day of the referendum, which is tomorrow. Personally, after all is said and done, I don't actually really care. I've never been to Scotland. I don't really want to go to Scotland. I don't even really know that many Scottish people, and of the ones that I do know, nothing is really going to change if Scotland do leave for me. I also have absolutely no idea what Welsh people think about this issue, so I'm just not going to comment on that, and I'll leave it to an actual Welsh person to do it for you. So I guess the question that remains for Scottish people is, can you be asked to just detangle our two countries after 300 years of union, and can you face the uncertainty of going it alone economically for the reward of a big slice of oil money and the right to govern your own policies completely? And I believe we will see that question answered tomorrow. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. I'm sorry it wasn't very funny, but I thought that a lot of you guys wanted some more actual information about it, so I hope that helped out. And apart from that, I guess I will see you all again very soon with the return of the best of the web, probably this weekend. So that's bye from me.